Here, I'll start it off. MJ and I met. I was directing a show down in New York City, and he came on. It was called Deeper Dives
Oh
with
wow.
Sharon Daster and Mitchell Stewart. And in between breaks, we would just, talk about Napa Valley and Paso Robles and different wines and stuff like that. And we became friends. And then he had Mitchell on the show on his podcast, and he had Sharon on his podcast, and then I was the third one.
It was actually Sharon and then Mitchell and then you. So yeah, Sharon's how I got to what was that what was the creative group called that? What was it called? It was called what creative? Man, that was like 4 years ago. That's a minute. Man.
Yeah, yeah.
But
HQ Creative.
that's where HQ create. Yeah, so the little headquarters. Yes. That's awesome.
So, if I recall correctly, and let's get back to you, you went to law school,
Correct.
you graduated.
Yeah, so I went to Rutgers Law School. I graduated in 1996. And took some bar exams, not seriously, but uh, I was pretty certain I didn't want to practice law. I didn't want to practice law, but I almost dropped out of law school. But my roommate convinced me to finish because the first year was the toughest part. I think I don't know if I shared this story with you, but I went to law school. I'm straight up Gen X. So and Billy will know this. I don't know how old you are, Danny, but Billy remembers a show called L.A. Law, man, and it made being a lawyer look sexy. And I remember Blair Underwood was the black lawyer on that firm, and I was like, I'm good
Hmm.
looking. I'm a black guy. I can wear nice suits. I speak so well. I should be a lawyer. And what I really wanted to be was I wanted to act. I should have just became an actor and got myself a long-standing gig on Law and Order. Uh,
Hey, MJ, I wanted to be Corbin Burnson.
there you go. You kind of got the look at the curl. You got the look, man. Law school was, I really wanted to do what I ended up doing with the podcast. I mean, what fascinated about you, Billy, was how many years you'd worked on late night TV. Someone asked me, what did you want to do like back in 2003, 2004? I was like, if I could have any dream job, I would love to have my own late night TV show. And so my undergraduate degree was in corporate communication. So I had concentrations in marketing, management, and video production. My story is that I had a child just before I turned 21. So when I'm 20 years old, I had a child. So I felt all this pressure. So that's why the law school, it was a safe bet. Um, uh, Obviously, that didn't play out. I should have just, knowing what I know now, you just got to put in work at something you want to do, and you got to put in the time. And if you put in your reps and you're good, I should have done this a lot sooner. But that was the thinking, just feeling the pressure. So that's why law wasn't. It looked glamorous. It looked uh,
Sexy.
sexy. I have no problem speaking publicly. So although this is a piece, I'm snarky as hell, like to argue with people, it'd be a pain in the ass. So I thought be good at it. But no, yeah, I mean, it was a DVA. I mean, most people who go to law school don't have a communications degree. It's like English or poli sci or philosophy. So it was a little weird combination. But yeah, never passed the bar. And tried a few times to live in California. Tried twice in California, which is a very difficult bar. But I finally retired that like in 2008 was the last time I took the bar. So
Right. Well, you worked it out and you're successful as a podcaster, as a wine guy, as a connoisseur, as somebody who's a tastemaker. So how did you get into the whole wine thing?
yeah, like so much of my life, I fell into it. I like to fall into things.
Yeah, don't we all?
Exactly. Um, Ex-girlfriend, friend of an ex-girlfriend. introduced me to a young guy. Well, we were young then. A guy named John Capon. His family owns the oldest wine store in America. It's on the Upper West Side. It's on West 72nd Street between Broadway
Hmm.
and Columbus. Called Acker Wines. It was called Acker Merrill back then. And he was, me and him used to hang out 90s. He was a hip hop producer actually. Like and so we would just smoke blunts, drink 40s. We weren't even drinking wine. After I got out of law school, it was like 97. Yeah, it was 97. And he's like, yo, MJ, man, come work with me and you'll drink the finest wines in the world on a nightly basis. At the time, I was living in Philadelphia. I did not want to live in Philadelphia. I mean, Philadelphia in the 90s was, well, it's Philadelphia when you can be in New York. Let's just put it that
Yeah.
way. Right? Um, so moved to New York. There's three guys in their 20s living in a one bedroom, fifth floor walk up above the store, working, 8 to 12 hours a day. That was 10 to 12 hours a day. And working the floor, learning about wine. I learned about wine by reading initially just turning the bottle over and reading what it says on the bottle. It'll tell you this wine has aromas of black cherries and cocoa. So I'm selling wine my first week, and I'm just reading what I just remember I was on the back of the bottle. And people are like, "Oh my God, that sounds delicious." Take that shit home and read it. That's what I was thinking to myself. But I'd work in the store, and then they would do these workshops, these wine tastings. People would pay depending on the wines. So I got to taste the best wine, literally the best wines in the world. I'd go upstairs, I'd pour for the tasting, and I get to sit in. So I was learning about, all the California cult wines. This is like I said, this is late '90s. Um, Wines that were maybe $85 now a bottle might be $800 a bottle. I mean, from around the world. And it was just and that's just, it's dumb luck. You don't get that type of wine education unless you're very fortunate. And that was a function of, you know, uh, relationships.
That's an awesome story. I mean, that is just how things happen, you know? Things fall into your lap. I mean, Danny just directed this incredible movie and yeah, he gave me a bit part in it, but it's such a great opportunity to work with different people and talk to different people from different walks of life. And I think, MJ, you said one of the greatest quotes I've ever heard. And you were like, I'm pretty sure this is the way you said it. I don't care how much it costs. I'm just drinking fermented grape juice.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Uh, Actually, yeah, I think and it was. I'm gonna give full credit to it was a gentleman I worked with, Steve Green, who at Acker when I first started, and Steve and my dad and John's dad Michael had went to Columbia together, and I'm not sure. I think Larry gave it, but like literally, like I learned not only did I learn about wine, I learned Yiddish. I learned some pseudo Yiddish working with these guys, and like we had the Steve Green claims that he created yada yada yada, but we definitely had a pitch key and and it was so much fun. But it was Steve Green who said, "I don't understand what all the hullabaloo is. Wine is just a pit stop between grape juice and vinegar." And it is. It's a chemical process that it's suspended in the state, and when it's
Wait, MJ, I don't know if you saw my Instagram today, but I posted our reservoir, no, our Pulp Fiction clip.
oh, I didn't see it again. Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, that was fun.
That was fun to do with you. And I'll tell you, Danny, that when I did MJ's podcast, he just said something and it sounded like Sam Jackson, just pure Sam Jackson from Pulp Fiction. And then I came up with this idea that why don't we promote his podcast doing Pulp Fiction? And that's what we did.
Yeah, I love that. That was so much fun. That and yes, I was honored you want to do that, and it was just fun to kind of work with someone like, I came into this late, and I'm part of the new media, but you've done traditional media, and it's great to see how you and Mitchell and Sharon, how people are still contributing to what's going on culturally. And so, iconic film, uh, Samuel L. Jackson, it's the one that
Can't
says
beat
bad
them.
motherfucker, and
Yeah.
to get to and I had my hair was long, I had my dreads, and we did the whole thing. We had the suits, man, and I think we did a pretty good we did a pretty damn good job for
I
just
was I looked terrible in that video, but I was trying to be Travolta. That's like in my walk and in my stance and my speech patterns. So that was a lot of fun. So let's talk about something here. James Lipton,
okay.
you questioned me on your show about some questions. So I know you a little too well. So now I'm going to let Danny ask you some questions. You ready, Danny?
Yeah, yes. MJ, a big thing that I wanted to talk with you about, and you touched upon it right there, is that idea of the new media, finding creative ways to express your vision. I really liked what you guys did there when you guys emulated the Pulp Fiction clip. You guys used fun references that people understand to broadcast to a larger audience your podcast. When it comes to finding creative ways to broadcast your brand, the wine, your podcast, your interviews, what are some interesting ways that you've thought of, okay, that are a little bit outside of the box that when it comes to like getting more eyes and ears on your projects? Like tell us about some ideas you've had like that.
Well, the I go my social media handle is the Black Wine Guy, and um, the podcast initially was called the Black Wine Guy Experience, which was a nod to Rogan and Jimi Hendrix. But I was working with a producer, and that was a moment. That was right. I started like right after George Floyd, so she was really into that. But what I had become known for was pairing music, lyrics, or songs with wines on Instagram. And so I always wanted to call the podcast Beats, Vines, and Life, which is a nod toward Tribe Called Quest. And wine was it's just an entryway to it's an invitation to a conversation, right? So Billy is not a wine connoisseur per se, but that dude fucking directed the Conan O'Brien show. Like that's the life side of this thing. I want to talk to that guy. I've had Gary Vaynerchuk on. I've used wine to have NBA players on. JJ Redick has come on because he knew me through wine. Channing Frye, who played with LeBron James in 2016 when they came back and God damn it, beat the Warriors first time coming back from he's been on. And then I've had like thought leaders like Seth Godin, who has written like 30 books. And when I approached Seth, he was like, "Well, I don't drink wine." I'm like, "That's okay. You're a marketing guru. There's stuff that people in my audience need to hear." And so my thing was like, I think the creativity comes in that by changing it to life. When it was just a Black Wine Guy Experience, I was just like, I still get too many pitches about that, but now I'm really expanding the scope. I want to talk to DJs, and I met a wonderful DJ, DJ 88 on Instagram. I'm going to have on the podcast. I had an author, Angela Nissel, who wrote for the Boondocks and wrote for Scrubs. I knew her from back in the day, but like we actually had a conversation about grief. She wrote a book about her mother passing, and both of our mothers passed from
Mhm.
cancer. So that was I think wine. The whole concept was who do I think would be cool to have a bottle of wine with, and now I'm taking that and really trying to use it to. I'm using wine as leverage to try and um, have conversations with people whose work I admire. Or I just think I want to get to hear their story, if that makes sense. So I'm not. So I turned down a lot of wine. I get wine pitches all the time. I'm like, I don't want to talk to that person. They're
Mm,
not interesting to me. This is about who I think is interesting, especially given like the new media landscape. Right? Obviously, I'm trying to
right.
grow, but like I think that I've been fortunate
Yeah, and I love everything you're saying there, MJ. And I wanted to touch upon a specific line there that you brought up. Someone you'd like to share a wine bottle with. We asked our last guest the same type of question. He was a musician. I'd like to ask you as well. Who is somebody in history that you would love to share a wine bottle with? Could be living, could be dead. Anybody throughout history. Who would that dream person be?
I got to tell you, that's a good question, but I would have to go. I mean, I would have to say Thomas Jefferson. And I'll tell you why, because the reason we have a wine in America is pretty much because of Thomas Jefferson. So very interesting to talk to the man who is responsible for, really who was the first American wine connoisseur. He's also a slave owner. And we could have such a great conversation, me and Tommy. So I think that would be really interesting one to have. Absolutely.
That would be amazing. Yes. My choice would be Debbie Gibson, but that's a different
Well,
story.
I listen, only in your dreams, buddy. As real as it may seem, it is only in your dreams.
Yeah, that is true.
But I mean, that's a tough one because I mean, shit. I mean, god damn, like, whoo. I mean, yeah, I mean, yeah, that would be if I want to be historical, but like, okay,
And MJ, the name of our show is Do It. It's that idea of talking with people who go out and do it, whatever that may be. For anybody listening that is very interested in the wine space, is there any advice that you could give to somebody looking to kind of dip their toes into that world, or just where would they get started?
yeah, I mean, get a corkscrew and start opening bottles. I think that I would tell people, and it can be more challenging. I came in, like I said, I worked at a store. Would be considered a specialty store, but if you can find a good wine merchant, um, now we have a lot of big chains. It could be whether it be Bevmo or Total Wine. Not everybody in there is necessarily a wine, but if you find a small shop with someone who and you could go, I'm new, I only have, and you don't have to have a lot of money. I want to spend about $15, $18. What can you recommend? You go to a nice shop, someone's going to spend some time because wine people love to talk about wine, like,
Yeah.
and if you and not everybody, I think most people aren't pretentious, particularly in that small shop setting. And if you're humble and go, you know hey, I just want to start learning about wine, and they'll get you on, find someone to get you on a program. Other than that, I think the easiest thing, if you don't, the best book on wine to this day, and I had this woman on my podcast because it was the book that did it for me. It's Wine for Dummies, the For Dummies books. It really breaks it down, makes it very simple, and a great. There's other books have come along, but for me, that's still like a gold standard is Wine for Dummies, and find a good merchant and someone you could talk to about wine.
And MJ, I was looking at your podcast description. The big thing that stuck out to me was the idea of interviewing people who are mavericks. In your opinion, what makes somebody a maverick?
Well, I mean, I think if you once you begin to understand the world of wine, most winemakers, well, yeah, the world of wine that I operate in, like I said, I turn down other people, but like you got to be a fool. Like it seems so glamorous, but a winemaker is a de facto farmer. They're sitting around waiting for the grapes ripen, um, and it seems glamorous, but you don't make a lot of money, and it's people trying to capture um, uh, art in a bottle. Um, but to me, a maverick is it's going to be the standard definition. Someone who does it their way, um, but I would say their way successfully, right? And success is different for everybody because a lot of people might think they're a maverick, but they're just a dumbass. They're not getting anything done. But
Well,
go ahead, Bill.
unless I'm wrong, isn't it trying to capture the zeitgeist of what people's taste is currently? Years ago, people were drinking, Carlo Rossi or whatever, and now people have evolved with their wine tastes. And you go up to a place like Paso or Napa or Sonoma, and there's all these wineries, and they're all expensive and they're all fantastic. But do you think that people's tastes have changed and are evolving? So whatever wine is popular today might not be in 5 years.
I think that that's a good question. I think that those that do that are not actually Mavericks. I think a Maverick stays the course. I think the Maverick wine, and particularly
Mhm.
if you talk about a Maverick winemaker, is like they have a vision for what they want to create and they stick with that. There are brands that specifically do that. People don't, you go to a big box wine retailer and a ridiculous amount, like 80% of the wines are coming from like three conglomerates that own labels across different price points, right? And whereas, Paso is a great place. You keep mentioning Paso. Paso is a great place that's known for having a lot of Mavericks, um, because it's kind of like the wild, wild west down there.
Yep.
They there's actually more, just because Paso is bigger, there's more Cabernet grown in Paso than Napa. Napa's so small, but like Paso is doing Spanish varietals, they do Italian varietals, they do French varietals, they grow just a lot of everything there. And there's so many experimental people, that the Maverick is the one, and it could be like, for instance, like orange wine or natural wine or trends, right? There's some younger winemakers who um, they're going to hang they're going to die on that hill, hang their flag on that, right? But I do think that at the end of the day, flavor wins, and he who makes the most pleasurable wine, he or she who makes the most pleasurable wine to drink, is going to win in the long run. But for me, a Maverick winemaker is not chasing the trends. They're not like, we need to have an orange wine. I'm going to do a natural wine because Vogue wrote an article, and now um, women want natural wine, or putting a Maverick doesn't put uh, zero sugar in their wine because there's no sugar unless you adding a dose. I mean, there's certain things that people do to acquiesce, and I believe the Mavericks just don't do that, particularly in the world of wine.
That's amazing.
And another thing, MJ, I always like to speak to people about this, but was there ever a time, it could be wine related, it could be entertainment related, where you endured a difficult time, and how did you get through it?
Oh man, I mean, yeah, I mean, with the podcast, I mean, woo! So I came out the gate really well. It was the right time. I mean, 2020 was, lockdown was happening. It was the right people. It was the right time, um, and I was working with a producer, and um, every dollar that I got went back into the production, right? And then it just came a point where um, I didn't have any more money. I didn't have money to pay the production team. And I went. I didn't put out an episode for like 2 months. I had to figure it out. I had to figure out. I had to figure out, editing. I had to figure out how to write the show notes. I had to figure all this stuff out because I was literally just like pampered talent. I was like, oh, okay. I just show up at the studio. They hand me my notes. I sit down, open the bottle, and that was nice. And I think for me, um, and I love the title of the show. Um, this is 2020. How much technology we've got in 6 years. So now, like, I use AI helps me do a lot of stuff. But at first I had to learn editing. Now I can have an AI editor, right? Now I can put the proper prompts into Claude that I use, and it can give me show notes in my tone, and then I edit them down. So people saying, but like there was a period where I didn't have any money. I had to fucking figure it out, and I took a hit. Like the numbers went down because I was, I mean, I'm still pretty prolific. I have over 200 episodes, and you guys know in this game, like most people quit after like 8, right? But like 20, between 20, which I was dropping like an episode almost. I did like 50 episodes. I was like in there every week, and then I had this 2 month lull, but I figured it out, got it back, and then I've had other things come up where personal life, but like now I've finally gotten this. I've gotten my stride where I'm like, okay, I always think about this, Danny. because I used to be a productivity trainer, and there was a method called the one thing. I think of what is the one thing that I can do. It has to be something that you can do. There's always something you can do. So I start with what I can do, and then go from there. And but yeah, man, it's uh, you know, I'm sure, and Billy knows better than all of us, like working with big budgets and all that stuff, and then like when the money, like, and then that budget's gone, you got to figure it out. Like even today, right? I'm like, okay, my Mac is old, so I figured out how to hook up my webcam, my little rig here, working my lav mic. This is stuff like as talent you don't want to have to do, but we're the talent is now the creator, the executive producer, the editor. So I've had to learn all that stuff, and so yeah, and it was very challenging. I didn't know if I was going to keep going, man. So yeah.
Wow. That's why me and Danny got into this. I mean, our origin story was that he was in one of my classes a couple of years ago, and just a fantastic student. And I saw greatness in him, and one of the things when I worked at that university was I could walk into a classroom day one and immediately see the talent.
Yeah.
And Danny was one of them. So, yeah, we're doing this and we're trying to do the same thing you're talking about.
Oh, absolutely, and thank you so much for that, Billy. And it kind of goes into the next topic I want to talk to you about, MJ. And I love what you talked about there with productivity, seeing what you can do at this moment. What I wanted to speak with you about is touching on the topic of college students, people who are just graduated. What advice would you have for somebody that wants to get into doing something big, let's say wine, let's say entertainment, but they don't even know where to start? They're a little bit nervous to dip their toes in. What advice would you give for somebody like that? That they want to take that first step, but they're a little bit afraid to.
Yeah, that's a great question. I found I stumbled upon a book recently, and it was called "Being an Artist is a Side Hustle." So first thing, remember, like is that it's a side hustle. But Danny, I think people don't realize a lot of people are surprisingly generous with their time, right? Like, so when I started the podcast, like most of all my guests I got were just through Instagram DMs, like cold DMs, right? Um, but yeah, I think people are generous. So find someone whose work you like and ask them for some of their time. People are generous. Ask them, for 30 minutes of their time and come in with a list of questions you want to have. I think the main thing is again that one thing philosophy is like is taking a little step every day, but like it's surprising how generous. Like to work with Billy, like that. Think about it. You and I working with this guy who worked with Conan O'Brien, right? Like he met me. I'm just answering questions. He's like, I like this guy. Let's work together. People are surprisingly generous. So um, find someone. The fastest way to do something is what's called modeling. Find someone who's doing what you're doing. Reach out to them and try and model their behavior. So that's where I would tell anyone to start, whether it's wine, whether it's video production, whether it's music. Find someone who you like, who's doing what you're doing, and make the request. Worst case scenario, they say no, and you listen. There's a wealth of information online now. I mean, like it's almost overflow. But I believe in people still. I can't believe I do. I believe in people still and their generosity, especially amongst creators.
That's very important. One of my greatest regrets was when I was working at Conan and some of the other shows, we would have interns the whole semester and they wouldn't speak to me. They were intimidated by me. And then on the last day, they would say, Billy, can I have an hour of your time to talk to? And I'm like, you could ask me any time this semester. My information just goes out. That's why I became a teacher. You know what? I just wanted to share. And that's what
Mhm.
you're doing too. Do you
Yeah.
agree, Danny?
Oh, I agree, and I love what everyone's kind of touching upon here is the idea that Sometimes it just takes that first step. Sometimes it takes that first DM, that first message, a little bit with that comes with a little bit of nerve-wracking feelings, but the outcome oftentimes is worth that effort. And touching upon modeling, MJ, who are some of your heroes that you feel yourself maybe modeling after, but also that they just inspire you in your day-to-day life? Could be a celebrity, could be family. Who are some of your personal heroes that you look up to?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I'll do two things. One, I would say, um, with the podcast and interview, I love great interviews. I think Charlie Rose was a great interviewer. Um, Tavis Smiley, great interviewer.
Mm.
See all the PBS guys, right? um, 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 and just a great conversationalist. I think in life, God, ooh, that's there was a oh, why is he escaping? I'm looking at his oh yeah, um there's an older dude, Jim. I used to work with this dude, Jim. Can't think of Jim's last name. Jim passed away a number of years ago, but Jim was this old, just older black dude. He was, you know, and I remember he used to work at our local mall. He worked at the men's shop at J.C. Penney's, and I mean, just a salesman, always sharp. I didn't know. I knew him from when I was a kid, and then I ended up connecting with him later because his son also ran track. I ran track, and then but Jimmy was like just you know any old black man who's like was like grew up like my dad, like Jim, like who was born like in 1939, 1940, lived through like all that shit, man. They
Mhm.
went through and had class and dignity and worked hard and raised their family. Just about any black man who did that is an idol of mine. Like my dad, like Jim, just put their head down, work, did what they have to do so their family could do what they want to do. But Jim was also cool because Jim was also a bachelor, so Jim would just give me advice about the ladies. He was super stylish. He was a slick dude, and Jim just would he could just had a way of making you just see that everything is comes in. You got to take it in stride, and tomorrow's another day. So yeah,
Amazing. Yeah, Jim. Don't mess around with Jim. You know
don't mess
that.
around with Jim.
And I love what you touch upon there, MJ, the idea of dignity and being somebody who holds class and who walks with grace. Was there ever a time that you encountered where you were faced with a situation where you kind of had to be the bigger man? You had to go forward with grace when you were met with a very tough situation.
Oh, yes. And I'm going to do specifically, but yeah, I'll give you a funny story, right? So this will be funny. You'll get a kick out of this, Bill. I remember,
Okay.
it's just one of those things where it's not that sweet, but it's very common for me. Like when I first saw wine, this was the late '90s, telephone, right? And just pick up the phone, call a client. I remember this guy had been buying wine for me for like 3 months, right? And just over the phone. It happened because I picked up the phone when he called and helped him. And then he liked the wines that I sent him the first time, so he kept calling back for me. So we were having a wine tasting on, and I invited him to the wine tasting at the shop. And he came in, and I remember he said to someone, he's like, "Hey, I'm looking." So MJ stands for Marvin. He's like, "I'm looking for Marvin." And they point over to me, and there's always when you black, you could tell when someone didn't know you were black over the phone. So he wasn't horrified, but he had just that look. He's like, oh, and it was just so funny to me. And I was like, I forget his name. I was like, hey, Tom, nice to meet you, man. Probably like, nice to meet you. It's like, oh, yeah, so good to meet you. But you could just tell he's like, I've been telling the dude, first of all, the dude's black and he knows about wine. I could just tell that. I could just see it in his face. But I mean, that happens a lot with me at wine. Like sometimes, like, I'm like, people like, I remember I was just selling wine for fun at like Whole Foods as a part-time job on weekends. Like I can make a little extra money, get a discount. And I was having to beg people to sell them wine. And then one time someone was like, no, I'm good. And I just rattled off I rattled about five the most expensive wines in the world. I'm like, well, have you had that? Have you had this? Had this? I said, well, I have. Maybe I can help you, you know. So, but like, but but typically, I laughed off. But that I love that look. Like, oh, this guy's black. I love that look. It's a fun one when they find out.
I could literally see you at Whole Foods just shoving a bottle into somebody's hands and saying, "Just drink this, motherfucker."
Exactly. I mean, exactly. Uh, exactly. I'm like, just trust me, motherfucker. You'll be back.
I love that,
Go,
MJ,
Danny.
because it also shows the idea that sometimes it takes a little bit more of that first push, that first push step to get where you want to get. When it comes to that, is there, I know this is going to be kind of funny, but is there a fun, big out there project? It could be wine related, it could be media related that you would love to try your hand at, but maybe others may not have seen you to be the direct type person for this type of project. But you're like, no, I think I can do this, and I think I can make that first step to do this project.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a great question, Danny. And you know it's been interesting is I'm bringing this thing fully around, but for some reason Audible just started throwing me autobiography. So I just finished Arsenio's autobiography or Arsenio's memoir, which was fucking great, and hearing his story. And believe it or not, I'm just finishing Jaleel White from Family Matters. And I'm and you
Oh yeah, he's got
and
a show on the Food Network or something.
yeah. And but like just the struggles of being a creator. But that being said, when this podcast, I think, and Beats, Vines, and Life, I think that I could do with wine what Anthony Bourdain did with food. Food was his invitation for people to sit down with him. Wine would be mine. And I've talked to a few people. No one has ever really cracked the code on wine because there have been some wine shows like Billy will tell you, I don't really think I know a lot about wine. I know a lot about wine, but that's not my thing. I know enough to sit down with the most knowledgeable wine people for sure. But wine should be about bringing people together and having stimulating conversations and fun. And I would love to see, a show on, like I said, there's been some wine shows, but they're not I don't. Yeah, they're not smart enough. They're not funny enough, right? Like they're either the wine per it's just too wine heavy, or it's just becomes silly and slapstick. If you look at what Bourdain's arc was at the end, he was talking about life issues, and that's why it beats Vines in Life. It's like there's a rhythm to life. There's a rhythm to the cycle of making wine. There's rhythm, obviously, in music, right? So it's about finding that rhythm, and I think
Hmm.
I think that I could do that show, and I think I could win Emmys for it, for best original. It's difficult to say stuff like that, but I really why I look once I started doing this, I look at things with an eye and like I've been like I'm like no I'm not I'm like I'm looking at it from a creator's perspective, not like I'm like and I don't see anybody out there who's really doing anything. There's people who might have more followers than I do and more views, but
Absolutely. And I think that's a great way to bring it all together here, guys, is the idea of bringing people together, trudging through tough times and finding what you really want to do in life. And MJ, it's been great getting to know you and chat with you as well. And when it comes to bringing people together, where can people find you online? Where can people listen to your podcast? Tell us all about those links.
thank you, Danny. So on social media, I'm Black Wine Guy. You could Google the Black Wine Guy. I am going to come up. My podcast, Beats, Vines, and Life, is available wherever you can listen to podcasts. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, uh, yeah, wherever all the major forms. I do record. I should be putting more on YouTube. I have some episodes up, and also if you do want to watch me, you can also watch episodes. I got picked up. I'm on a streaming network called Wine Watches and Whiskey, where you can find the Black Wine Guy Experience and Beats, Vines, and Life on Wine Watches and Whiskey. So
So as we come
Okay.
to the close here, guys, MJ, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It was incredible. and our listeners can't wait to hear your journey, see your journey, and thank you so much for being a part of this show today.
Danny, Billy, thank you so much for inviting me on your show. It's an honor, and look forward to collaborating with you guys in the future.